Nice. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I can see numbers climbing up pretty quickly, so that's great. I love when people are right on time. So as people are logging on, just going to remark on the weather. It's nice here in Rochester today. Finally getting some snow, which people were disappointed we didn't have snow for Christmas, but it's coming. All right. Thanks again for joining as people log on. Just want to say glad to have you all here with us. We saw a lot of signups for this session, which is our very last info session for cohort 7. It's kind of hard to believe. I'm always surprised when we reach this time of year, starting the new year, getting ready for another cohort. But it's always really nice to see the interest. We only have a few days left to apply. Applications are due at the very end of the day this coming Monday. But great to get your last minute questions answered and feel good about applying. All right. So just quickly, my name's Kate Leonard. I'm just going to be on to kick this session off for Damon. I'm the digital marketing manager at NextCore, which is the nonprofit creator and administrator of Luminate. Before we begin, I just wanted to let you know that this info session is being recorded. So if you have to hop off, you'll get the recording in your inbox shortly after we wrap, either later today or first thing tomorrow. If you do have questions, you can use the Q&A button on your control panel, pop those in anytime. Damon's going to run through quite a few slides, but then we're going to save plenty of time at the end to address those. For those of you who are just joining, I can see more people hopping on. I'll put these details in the chat in just a moment. All right, but what are we covering today? Dr. Damon Deal, he's Luminate's Director of Technology Integration. He's going to provide a brief overview of what Luminate is all about. That part will be fairly quick. It's going to walk through the questions for our online application that's hosted on F6S. And then really the focus of this today is on tips, so pointers to stand out, to do well. Damon is one of the reviewers on our applications every year. So if anyone knows what we're looking for, how to stand out and, put your best foot forward, it's definitely him. And just finally, one more point. If you didn't attend or you haven't had a chance to review the recordings, we do have our first 2 info sessions available for you to take a look. And those offer something pretty different from what we're going to cover today. First, we went through the ins and outs of Luminate in way more detail back in November. And then we hosted a panel discussion with some recent Luminate graduates from cohort 6. So those are always nice to take a look at, particularly the panel. It's nice to hear from other people besides the Luminate team, hear from your peers, other startups that went through the program. So you can get those on our website. Just head to luminate.org, click on about, and you'll see the info sessions, but I'll also put the direct link in the chat. But now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Damon Deal.
Hi, it's a pleasure to see everyone. As Kate said, I am Damon Deal. I am the Director of Technology Integration here at Luminate. So my job is to understand the technology of the companies that are in there and then help them make regional, connections. The structure of Luminate is important to understand in order to apply. And so I'm going to run through this first. And Luminate is a startup accelerator. We're located in Rochester, New York, as Kate said earlier on. And we are both a startup accelerator and an investment fund. And we have kind of uniquely, we are not-for-profit startup accelerator. But when people are applying, they need to think about the fact that we are investing, that we care a lot about thinking about companies' path toward profitability. We are focused completely on optics, photonics, and imaging right now. We are unique in that we call ourselves the largest, which is easier to do when you are the only. But optics, photonics, and imaging is a specialized industry for people who are developing products where that is the underlying technology. There are some unique challenges, and that's why Luminate was formed, was because we work hard to help companies start that have this as their underlying technology. We've been running for 6 years, and at this point, we have kind of a remarkable background. after 6 years, 94% of our companies are still in business. And that is a remarkably low attrition rate. And that is because our goal is that every company that graduates from Luminate graduates as an investable company. Our companies are very good at raising funds, either in terms of grants or in terms of investment. And you can see the number down there, 11 to 1. So for every dollar that we have put into a company, we have seen them able to raise another $11. And at this point, the estimated cumulative value of our portfolio, our share in these portfolios is $650 million after 6 years of investing $3 million each year. The structure of Luminate in terms of the financial support is that at the beginning of the program, we have $1 million that we distribute equally among the 10 companies that we apply. Every year we accept 10 companies and then usually 2 in an alternate position. We give each of them $100,000 investment, which is generally in the form of a safe note. And after 6 months, we do an evaluation of the companies and have another $2 million that we invest. One company always receives $1 million, and then the second $1 million is invested between 3 or 4 other companies. And also during the course of our program, our companies pitch to over 30 investors. We have tight relationships, and the thing that makes those investors special is that they understand optics. For those of you who are working with optics as your underlying technology, you probably deal with the frustration that you feel like you have to give a physics lesson at the beginning of every pitch. And with our brief pitch structure that we use with these companies, most of them are coming in with a familiarity in optics already. During the 6 months of the program, we cram a lot into that. And that has been called a crash MBA. And within 6 months, every week, twice a week, for 2 to 3 hours, we have a workshop on business development. And that is a highly interactive and personalized. And that curriculum of over 45 classes, we have been honing over the course of 6 years with the background of understanding what does it take to build a company that has optics, photonics, and imaging as their core technology. The other critical part of our program is our advisory board. If you look at our advisory board on our website, it is outstanding. And every one of our advisors takes on 2 or 3 companies that are in our cohort every year. And also we will pull in people from other industries in order to provide guidance for companies. Every company that is in our program has 2 or 3 mentors. At the end of our program, and this is tied to that goal of being investable, every graduate should have a completed due diligence folder. A due diligence folder is what an investor is going to expect to see when they're looking at a startup to determine whether they should put money into them. And that is remarkably detailed. And our coursework everything in our course is tied to helping people fill in these different aspects. And it gets down to the detail of, you cover sort of obvious things like business plan and market study, but we get down into human resources manuals. You can't hire people, you can't grow your company if you don't have the capability of hiring. And so we care about that. We bring in people who are experts in hiring and technology. The program also has an online component. Companies come here for 1 week out of each month. That is a core part of our program. And that is in order to get our startups really well connected to the Rochester region and also get well connected to each other in order to use the resources that we have here that make Rochester a unique region to be working in. We have our own optics lab, And there are also laboratories at, for example, the Institute of Optics at the University of Rochester that our companies work with. And then the incubator itself, the NextCore, has all of the things that you would expect from an incubator, from shared workspace to coffee, to getting into more things like we have some really great conference rooms and and AV equipment to support people in doing that kind of work. We also have the world-renowned photonics cluster that grew out of Rochester. It used to be called the Rochester Regional Photonics Cluster, but now it spreads across the entire state. And the beginning of our program is an introduction of all of our companies coming in to that New York Photonics cluster, so that from the very beginning, the companies that come into our program are working to build relationships in New York to tie the companies that are coming in to these critical and unique optics, photonics, and imaging resources that we have around here. And that includes things that go all the way from early stage design through prototyping and manufacturing. And we also have some unique, we do not specifically work in hiring, but we work with other organizations that have a specialization in helping optics companies find the kind of talent that they need. Luminate is a very competitive process, and that's why I'm glad to see that you're attending today, because our window closes January 8th. There are 2 rounds of internal vetting that go on until we reach the point where we have reduced the pool down to 20 to 25 teams. And at that point, those teams are going to pitch directly to our board of advisors and some other technology experts or academic experts that we will bring in order to make our decision on who is going to be filling the 10 core spots of the program, and then again up to 2 runners-up positions. The definition of runner-up has shifted over the years. At times, it has been companies that have participated in the entire program, but have not received the funding, but they've been able to do all the training. There's also been companies in that position where we have helped them. The primary part was connecting them to regional resources. The important thing about being in a runner-up position is that if one of the 10 companies does drop out, then the companies in the runner-up position are able to move into that spot, and that makes them in a position where they could receive that $1 million of funding at the end of the program. And once that decision process is made, then the program itself is going to kick off in April 2024. We are doing that on a very important date. It is going to be April 8th, which is the day of a total solar eclipse. And Rochester is in the path of totality. So our kickoff day is on the path of totality day, and we are having a party on our beautiful rooftop. And now we get into the details of applying to Luminate, and the first thing are these kind of minimum requirements. And to be in Luminate, you need to be incorporated, and there need to be 2 or more dedicated team members. And that has that's become the case because our program is very intense, and we found that it's most valuable when a company has 2 or more people who are able to lift the load of participating in the program and get the most benefit out of it. You also need to have a prototype, and that is working in the laboratory. I'll be talking a little bit about what you're able to do to demonstrate that. but we we aren't working with companies that are working at a theoretical level. We are not strictly a hardware accelerator. But as you can imagine, when we're working with optics, photonics, and imaging, we end up having a lot of deep tech applications. And so in order to get the most out of this program, we are trying to connect you to design and manufacturing. And for that to be valuable, a company needs to have already been past or really deeply into that prototype phase. And a key part of our program is that you need to have leadership who are able to dedicate the time to come to Rochester for these in-person weeks once a month. Those are a crucial part of our program. That is how we do this deep embedding of companies into our region. And it's also how the companies in our cohorts make these lifelong relationships. A lot of them become collaborators, and you see that not only within within 1 year of the program, but now that the program is going into its 7th year, we have what we call verticals of technologies. So we can connect our companies to other startups in the region who have been through our program, who are also working in digital imaging or working in ophthalmology. The application is done through F6S, and the way you get to our specific application is you go to the Luminate website and you go to the Apply directory, and there is an application button on the front of our page that will take you to here, and that is going to take you to f6s.com, which will drop you right into our application page. You will first need to build out a profile in F6S if you have not done that already, which is going to do some very basic information about your company. And then in the application, and I'll go into this more detail, in addition to filling out all of the wording, you're going to have the opportunity to put in videos, and you have up to 3 videos, and to cover the technology, your team, and essentially your pitch. This is a list of the questions that are that are in the application. The application is deceptively simple, I tell people. And when you are doing this application, you need to think in terms, I'll go into more detail about this later, but it's not just filling in all of these questions. You want to make these as compelling as possible. But let me run through some of these at the beginning. We really value hearing how you heard about Luminate, because that affects how we do our marketing in the future, and that is very important for us to be able to bring in the highest quality talent. The one-line description of your company, you should keep it one line. This is your elevator pitch, and it needs to be something direct and that gets us interested in your product right away. The year your company was incorporated is not a critical factor in our decision-making process, but it's something that we do need to know when we're looking at the progress your company has made over the course of how long you've been incorporated. We do not require revenue. However, revenue always looks good. And if you do have revenue, then you definitely want to report it. And so if you can report on what you have been able to bring in the previous 12 months, and what you project to bring in the following 12 months, then definitely do that. Take advantage of having that kind of information. Again, revenue is not a requirement, but it's certainly an advantage. The amount of money that you have raised is of interest. It is, again, not a deciding factor. We have companies that come in with enormous ranges, and what we really use that information for is, what have you done with that money? If we look at how much money you have raised, what is the level of maturity for your technology and your growth and your development? And we are interested in knowing what other accelerator programs you have been involved in. Partly that is because our program has tries to adapt to our companies as they are in the program, and it's always useful to know where companies are coming from. Also, we can check your track record, and we can talk to people. We have tight relationships with, as you can imagine, most other accelerators, and we're able uh, to hear about your successes at other locations. The uh, um, with the question about the international um, companies, a value of Luminate is, a thing to keep in mind is that we are funded by New York State. We care about economic development. And for a lot of companies, they see Luminate as a stepping stone, as a soft landing to get themselves into the United States market. So it is good for us to know what your intentions are there. You can answer that with more than a yes or no. If you have a plan for what you want your U.S. operations to look like, then definitely put some detail in there. With your board members, do more than just give a name. If you can, if you can say a little bit more about what that person is bringing to your organization, then that is a valuable thing to do. We don't need a biography, but if you can say more than just the basics of their name, then that helps us make a better assessment. With your team and their roles, one thing that I encourage you to do that may not be obvious is that there is a section for founders. And what I encourage you to do, and I'll bring this up again later on, is that be broad in your notion of what the founders mean, because that's the place where you're able to put the most detail about your team. So that is where you're going to be able to put a direct link to LinkedIn, et cetera. And so definitely think about getting anybody who is critical to the success of your company to go ahead and list them in there if they are critical to the success of your company. And we do care about the number of employees that you have. This relates to the level of maturity. We do not have a maximum or minimum on that, though Luminate accepts a very large range of companies. I mentioned before that we are an investment portfolio, and part of what that means is that we are looking at maturity and time to exit. So we actually look at a number of different company sizes, technology levels, but in order to make our assessment, we need to know what your team looks like. And I had brought up before this importance of being able to have people come to Rochester, and just I can't say that enough. That is a core part of our program. So make sure when you are answering that question, don't step in the mistake of saying no one. People do that occasionally. If you can't have somebody come to Rochester for these in-person weeks, then that really crushes your chances of doing the program. So really think about, and I guess another thing to realize is that it does not have to be the same person all the time. Those in-person weeks, it is quite common for a company to send different people to different weeks. For one thing, a really common thing is to switch off between the CEO and the COO, so executive and operations. And also, frequently some people send their CTO, technology, to come in and meet with the resources here in Rochester, sort of a nerd to nerd level. And so think hard about who it is that's going to be coming to our program for those week-long events. This next part gets into the business development. So we need to know things like the market that you are serving, and you want to be brief in all of these, but also be be concise, but be thorough. So what is your entry market? And so that we can think about the fit that you have and how will that fit in with the companies we help and with our investment thesis as well. And also getting into customers and competitors, give us some detail on that shows us that you are aware of your market and that you're not coming in completely naive. And if you have revenue, you do not have to have revenue. If you have revenue, if you have customers, then make sure that you give us some clarity on where you are in that situation. Getting a little bit more into my world of the technology, we would like a brief description of your technology. You don't have room to duplicate your master's thesis or PhD thesis. What you want to do is give us enough information to know what you're doing. And an interesting thing, unique thing about Luminate is that we are optics experts. Everybody who's going to be looking at your application has a background in optics. You don't need to go, that means you do not need to go really deep into the technology, but if you give us basically the key words of what you're doing, then we can have the right kind of people looking at your application from a technology level. And then another thing that some people foul up is this part about how you're using optics, photonics, imaging. We are completely dedicated to optics, photonics, and imaging. So that needs to be a focus of your application of how you are going, how it is that you use optics, photonics, and imaging in your product. Because if that isn't the case, then we're just not the right match for you. And then this aspect about the current status of your technology, again, we invest in a pretty large range because we have an investment portfolio that we have to balance out in terms of time to exit. And that's why we care about that status of technology. But also, we need to know, are you at a point where we're going to make a difference in terms, because we do work really hard, not just on this notion of business development, but on the integrating you with resources to help you develop your technology. Here and other, can you participate on site in Rochester, New York? That is another sort of trick question. If the answer is no, then the chance of getting into Rochester are 0. So do not say no as your answer to that question. And you do not have to have existing relationships in New York. If you do, then that is fantastic. But this is also a place where you can talk about what relationships you would want to build. And sometimes this particular question has become the points of competition every year can kind of change from year to year. And there have been a couple of years where the New York engagement has really been one of the critical parts of the competition. Is we're looking at companies and how well they are either integrated into New York or are poised to do that. This question about what you want to get out of Luminate, I will talk more about this later, but think about what it is that we are, what it is that we do. It is worth your time to dig deeply into our website and think about what it is that we have to offer that that you're going to be able to take advantage of. Because when we are picking our candidates, we are picking people who are going to get the most out of our program so that our resources are being spent most effectively. And you have an opportunity to apply to add videos to your application. Do not overlook this. Definitely do it. They do not need to be Academy Award at all. Most people shoot these on their phone. But the things that you want to do is, and these have to be brief. We have had people submit videos of them giving a science lecture. We don't have time to do that. We have a lot of applications to go through. We can't watch a science lecture. These are your chances for an elevator pitch to get us to really grasp what you're doing. This is an opportunity for you, and you can do up to 3 videos, 2 at the beginning and 1 at the end, to show us what the state of your technology is, to let us get an insight into who your team is, and also to give us a personal pitch on your business and why you want to be in Luminate. And you have the ability to add in some additional documents there at the end. They're not required. Most people don't. There are some cases where if someone is doing, for example, a medical instrument and they need to make a strong case that they are knowledgeable about what they're going to need to do or not do for clinical trials, that sometimes it's valuable to put a document there just so that we know that you know what you're talking about. The timeline for our program is, as you know, the application window is going to be closing next week, and that leads to our internal selection round. And so we will let people know by February whether you are going to need to give a pitch to the board. And after that pitch, then at the beginning of March, we will be giving people a notification about whether they are in and out of the program. And the program itself is going to kick off at the beginning of April. Like I said, this year it is on April 8th, the day of a total solar eclipse. The program runs intensely, and then it ends in September with our finals. And for the 6 months, the residency requirement is that the company will be on site or in person in April and May and in June. In July, we do not have an in-person component. In August, we have another week that is in person. And then in September, the companies are here for 2 weeks. And that is because I cannot reiterate enough, Luminate is not a classic pitch competition. The investments that we are doing at the end are based on our assessment of the companies as a business. And that means that the companies are going to give a presentation to our board, and that's going to be assessed over the course of a few days before we have our finals the following week, which is a big public event and it's a lot of fun. But people, we try to make it clear to people that our decision is not based on people going up on stage and giving a pitch. Our decision is based on 6 months of work and then another week of assessment at the end of the program. Now we're going to dig into my pointers on applying. And what I would like people to think of here is that I am trying to make our job as hard as possible. Meaning I want your application to be so good that we have a really difficult decision in who is going to advance into the program. And I also teach, I've taught people classes on grant writing, etc. The most important thing is to think about what is the problem that you're solving and why should Luminate care about it. And so that involves understanding what we care about in terms of technology. It's worth your time thinking about the markets we've invested in, but research what it is that Luminate, what we do. And to get into the specifics of that, we are funded by New York State and we are a not-for-profit. And so, but an interesting aspect of that is that we are not-for-profit that also is responsible for taxpayer money. So we do invest and we have a long-term goal for what our investments are. We, as a not-for-profit, have had a little bit more of a relaxed frame of mind for the length of time to market in terms of technology development. But it is always, there's also always an attraction for companies that have a really clear path to market that we're able to grab and then think about that in terms of our portfolio. And when we make our decisions at the end of the program, a lot of things go into that, and uh, a lot of people apply to Luminate more than once. And the reason for this gets into this part here at the end, which is that by the time a company gets to being in that top 20 where they come to give a pitch to us, those companies have been vetted pretty thoroughly. So a company that doesn't get into the top 10 in Luminate, doesn't get into the program, that decision can be pretty complex. And generally, I encourage companies that don't get into Luminate to, especially if they made it into that that top tier, that they definitely reapply, because we are in charge of investment. We do have to think in terms of technology and time to market, but don't let that deter you from applying, because that changes. We do not have a way of knowing what technology from our portfolio may have exited at some particular time, creating more space in it for something that you may have seen in our portfolio before. And getting into things that are critical for you to do is that you absolutely need to explain how your technology, how your product or technology is going to relate to our core purpose, which is optics, photonics, and imaging. We really need to understand how what you're doing is going to be tied in with what we do best. And as I've said before, it's worth, if it's getting repeated by me, it's because that's how important it is. What is your plan for New York? And that is, again, one of the reasons why I'm glad that you are in this presentation, because our application is deceptively simple. It's easy to just gloss over that, when actually it is incredibly important to have a plan for what you're going to be doing in New York. And also, what is it that you want to get out of the Luminate program? We have a specific focus. There are things that we do well. How are you going to take advantage of those things that we do really well? So all three of those things are things that you really need to be thinking about as you're forging your application. And on a broader sense, for content in general, and this would be true for any application that you're putting into any accelerator at all, is the videos. Uh, uh, they are your chance to make a face-to-face impression. So make them concise, make them focused, and make them compelling. When you are answering the questions, you want them to be as short as they can be, or Einstein has some quote like exactly as long and no longer. So be concise. And for any of you who have worked in either marketing or in science, which I think is probably everybody, it's harder to write short than to write long. So it can take some thought to get to a message that is concise. Do not leave blanks in the application if it's something that is true for you. So a conspicuous blank is, for example, your New York impact, right? If someone hasn't thought about that and they've left it blank, then what can we do? It doesn't match for our program. I gave you the tip before about putting your C-level staff in the founders section, because the strategy there is that is the area where we are able to just click on somebody and look at their background. So definitely take advantage of that little tip. It is really important you don't have control over the document as you're putting it together in terms of formatting and underlining and things like that. So as you're putting it together, think about how does it look to a reviewer with what you can do. And so separating information into putting some extra lines in there can help. Um, Creating some bullets if there's sequential information you want to have. Think about the legibility. And also I have done there proofread. We don't go through and grade your grammar, but you want to make sure that we understand what you are saying. We need to get your message. And so read yourself a lot to make sure that what you are writing is what you mean. And my final tips is that we, and I've said this before, you do not have to have grants. You do not have to have contracts. You do not have to have revenue. You do not have to have endorsements. However, if something like that is true, if you have won a sizable grant, if you have contracts or joint development, if you have some revenue, even you don't, most companies that apply here are unprofitable. Um, it's early stage businesses, we get that. But if you have some trickle of revenue, that shows that there's some traction. And we don't make a big deal about endorsements. We don't have time to go through and track down resumes or letters of support. But if there is something that really makes a difference, then it is okay to attach that there at the end. And the bonus is that when we are looking at your application, we are going to click on you and see what your LinkedIn profile looks like. So have your LinkedIn profile up to date so that we can see where you've worked. We can see what your education is. We can see who you know. And also your website, to the extent, I know some companies are operating in stealth mode, so maybe the information is mostly going to be in your application. But if you have a website that we're able to click on and get some information that you weren't able to put in your proposal, then take advantage of that. And I think that covers the bulk of what we wanted to get through today. So then we lead into a Q&A, and I can see things have popped up. I will let
Oh,
Kate.
yes, we have a lot of questions and it is great.
Okay.
I did answer some of them as we were going along, just easier ones that I was able to answer, but I left some open because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't giving people incorrect information. But just want to fly through the answered ones very quickly so everyone is aware. One question that came up: what time is the application due on Monday? That is 11:59 p.m. Eastern. So very end of the day on Monday is when applications close on F6S. It might hang out, the application button might hang out on our website a little bit longer, but that's just because we are sleeping. But it is closed at the end of the day on Monday. Can workshops be done virtually? I believe that Damon answered this pretty clearly, but most workshops and participation is done virtually. You know, it's just that 1 week a month for the 5 months, not 6, because Damon mentioned there is 1 month where we are not together, but it is important to get someone there in person. In terms of the timeline, someone asked about that. Yes, you will get some news in February in terms of if you need to pitch for our down selection, and then March is when our final decision is shared. There have been a lot of questions about the videos, whether it is one video, multiple videos. Damon, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it really is just whatever is easiest for the teams to provide. So if they can cover all their points in one video, that's great. If they have an existing tech video or tech demo that they want to share with us, but then they record something that introduces their team and goes over a little pitch, that's fine too. Let's just keep it short and cover those points. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want people to know that there is an opportunity to have more than one.
Mhm.
And in particular, sometimes it's easy to, we're pretty technical people. So if you have something that you want to show about your product that you wouldn't normally include in a pitch, you can do that with us. And we'll think it's cool and we'll probably understand it.
Nice. Okay, so getting into the questions that are open, we have quite a few. Do you support companies financially with travel and housing in Rochester?
That is why we give you $100,000. The $100,000 is not life support money. It is money to, we understand that a 6-month commitment is a big deal. And we want our companies to have the resources to do that. We have people with families, right? It is important to know that half of that money needs to be spent in New York, right? It is money that you should be using to build out your relationships to, and uh, and spending in New York also includes your hotels and travel and things like that. But yeah, that money we're giving you at the front of the program is to enable you to participate in the program.
But we do provide support in terms of blocking. We have like hotel blocks that we set
Yeah.
aside, so it's easy for you to have some options when you're in town. Obviously, if you decide, we've had teams who want to rent an Airbnb on the lake and do that instead. I mean, that's up to you, but we try to give you some options of an easy place to stay. Some people decide that they need to move here. There's actually some housing within the building that NextCore Luminate is located in, and we've had multiple teams stay in those apartments. And we also we know the area well. So I've given recommendations for, neighborhoods that might be good to find a rental or something like that. So you are not alone there, but as Damon said, in terms of how that money is spent or where that comes from, we don't offer anything additional to the 100,000.
And I would say one other thing that is, as far as travel goes, is that if we take you somewhere, then we pay for it. So we have it's not technically a part of the 6-month program, but we have an investor forum where we bring our investors together to meet each other, but we take our companies to that. And when we do that, we have covered, I think we've helped cover the travel and hotel. At least we helped cover the hotel for that.
The question on amount raised, so when reporting amount raised in the application, the person is asking dilutive and non-dilutive capital.
Yes. So for the amount that you have raised, yes, it can be grants or it can be investments.
Okay. Can an international company that has a partnership with a New York company apply?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The question is, are we going to be able to make a difference? If you are, I don't know, Siemens, then probably we're not the best fit. But yeah, absolutely. And companies that have a relationship with New York definitely have a leg up. So sure.
Great. This person has 2 questions. I can answer one fairly easily. Is there any fee to apply? No. And then do you take any equity?
Equity at the beginning is a safe note. So a safe note is future equity, right? But that isn't, so there isn't equity for that upfront at all. A safe note can end up turning into a loan, or the reason safe notes exist is that we don't come after you for money later on. If things bad happen to your company, it isn't a debt note. However, at the end of the program, if a company is getting that follow-on funding, then that is an investment that does turn into ideally an equity stake in one form or another. That is a conversation to have much further down the line, because you can always decide at the end of the program that you don't like that deal. But at the front end, which is what really should matter with people here, there is not a direct stake in equity at the beginning. You have to, and you can talk to, before you get in the program, you can talk to our director about the terms of the safe note.
All right. Tony wants to know, what is the acceptance rate at Luminate, the ratio of applicants to intake?
Okay, so I don't want people to use this as a reason not to apply, because Luminate is competitive, but people do apply more than once. Typically, Luminate has about 130, 120, 130 applicants a year, and we accept 10. So, and then we have +2. So it's basically a 1 in 10. But again, it is quite common for companies to apply more than once. And the one that people point to the most is that Sun Density from our second year. They did not get into the second year of the program. They worked very hard for a year to do their proof of concept. They came in the third year, they got into the program, and they also received the $1 million funding at the end of the program. So apply to the program. And a thing to know is that if you ask for feedback, we will give you feedback. We are a not-for-profit dedicated to business development. It is in our best interest for there to be as many healthy companies developing technology in optics, photonics, and imaging as possible. So if you apply and ask, we'll try to, from the notes that I have, I will give you feedback. It's a big lift for us, by the way, as you can imagine with that many applicants, but we try. Yeah, we really do.
Right. Next question. As far as the plan for New York, can it also include the state? So New York City, for example, beyond Rochester, we have a market that pertains to New York City industries.
Yes, absolutely. There is a little bit of a preference for quote unquote upstate, which is anything that's not New York City, as if New York is an appendage. But yeah, we have companies. In fact, there's a company, QNECT, QUNNECT, and they are in Brooklyn.
All right, another question about the video. So I just want to reiterate, if people missed it, you can submit multiple videos. You have the choice. It really is up to you. So apologies if that's unclear in the application, but it can be one video, it can be 3 videos, multiple videos, whatever you need to do. Just do your best to keep it short and to the point.
Yeah, don't do more than 3.
Please don't do more than 3. Question about endorsements. Are you looking for a letter of support from prospects or customers, or recommendations for the team members?
I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time pursuing something like this unless, because we don't seek them out in an application. Either of those things would be fine, right? But if you have like submitted an application for like a small business innovative research grant, those sorts of letters are unspoken requirements. And for us, it's that we leave a space for it if there's something that you think is going to be outstanding as far as something that we need to know about your company.
Okay, I'm getting some more questions about equity percentage on the SAFE. Clarify the investment terms on the SAFE. Is there anything else you wanted to share there, or is that kind of more details?
I can get myself into hot water. So anything really specific about that, I will probably shift over to our finance analyst to talk about the structure of all the investments that we've done.
Okay. All right, so that one's done. Can we edit the application even after submission? I think so.
Not after January 8th.
Okay.
So, and then as far as the prototype, that we need to know where you are right now. And we have had companies that have come into the program with a benchtop just out of graduate school prototype and gotten in successfully. We have had people who are making quantum cascade lasers, and they have commercial ready ones, right? So there's an enormous range of companies that have come into the program, but it's a snapshot of where you are, and then we make a decision at the board level of how much of what stage of technology we're bringing in any given year.
All right. Asking for a little bit of clarity around that initial 100K investment. So just want to repeat about the half spent in state.
Yeah, we don't collect receipts, right? So there is a certain level of uh, and an honor system on that in terms of the distribution of funds. That is probably something else to talk to a finance person um, about how that really works out. But yeah, it comes from when our program operated out of COVID, the way that we were able to maintain that regional engagement was by having people, while they weren't living in New York, engaging New York resources for what they were doing with that funding.
Okay, next question. Is the in-person week the same for all participating companies to meet as a cohort, or does each company choose the week based on availability? It's the same for everybody, and we'll let you know well in advance. Typically when the program starts, you'll know which week per month you're going to be expected to be in person. And we also try to just, line up a lot of activities for you to do. Some of it is, it's a workshop or it's meeting with experts that are going to benefit you. But then a lot of it is we want you to have a cohort experience. So we have fun things set up for you in the evening and stuff like that. So it is the same. And the point is to really get you all together. Is this webinar recorded? Yes, it is. So if you missed anything, don't worry. You'll get this in your inbox later. Should DoD SBIR contracts be considered revenue or non-dilutive funding?
You can just report that you have them. We're not tracking because I have a background with DoD contracts. So I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I would, it's just the amount that matters, right? Just say that you have a DoD SBIR for a certain amount of money. And those of us who know what you're talking about will know what you mean and why that's a little bit murky.
Would you encourage us to incorporate the U.S. subsidiary company in the state of New York?
No. Generally, most companies are a Delaware corporation, even if they are, yeah, very rarely would somebody do the incorporation in New York specifically.
Okay. Not sure I understand. What should safe/convertible notes be designated on the application? Existing investment portion? Should debt be used?
So the only reason that is of interest to us is the notion of traction, right? So when we're looking at a safe or convertible note, we're not doing something like going through your cap table and making some sort of deep cap table analysis. What we are looking at is basically, have people believed in you enough to give you money? Debt note is complicated. If you have received something in terms of a debt note, it's still worth mentioning that as long as it's something that's representing that somebody has done that funding because they have a faith in what you're doing as a company.
All right, next question is around the ratio of international applicants. What's our ratio to date? It has changed each year. I believe it's 2021. We had our 50-50 split.
Yeah, gosh. Yeah, because we've had applicants from 50 companies from around the world. It's gosh. I can look it up. We've got a spreadsheet that does that, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure. And I can't, now that we've got 60 companies, I can't rattle them off in my head anymore.
Similar to that, someone had asked, where is it? Have you had an Israeli company?
Oh yeah, twice.
Oh, maybe it was. Okay. Wow, you are all full of questions, which is great. Explain. I think we're in. Okay. Do you accept applications from companies with pure SaaS solutions for vision, or do you require a hardware component?
We had a company last year, if you look up, that was just SaaS, for vision.
Okay, there's a couple more questions about the safe note. I'm going to skip those. We have our email address in there, so if you really want to drill down into this, please send a note to info@Luminate, and we'll try to get you an answer from someone else. That's coming up quite a bit, but I want to save us some time. Someone said, hi, I don't think we can edit the application. Well, if there's an edit that you would like to make, I mean, what would you suggest, Damon? Just reaching out and letting us know.
Yeah, if you want to reach out to me about something that you want to change in your application, after it's been submitted, I can see what I can do. Yeah. I mean,
All
it's before the end of the application date, so I'll see what I can do if there's something new that needs to be added.
All right, got some repeat questions here, so hopefully people have had these answered by the time they came up. What about personal loans?
I wouldn't include a personal loan in something like when you're talking about fundraising.
Okay. Do you have any experience with the field of metamaterials and optics?
Yes. So last year, one of our companies, PlanOpSim, is a design software for meta-optic materials.
Great. I'm glad this last question came in. If you are not selected this round, when will the next application be due? I wanted to let everyone know that Luminate is actually moving to rolling applications. It'll be due for cohort 8 around the same time frame, so early January. However, our window of time when you can apply will be open all year round. So the application page will just flip over on our website, and you'll be able to submit applications for 2025 starting on January 9th. But it's the same kind of time frame every single year. It'll just be open for longer this time. So I believe that is it. And we're actually a little bit over the hour. Damon, we filled the whole hour.
Okay.
So thank you again. Any final points, or can I wrap us up?
That's up to them.
Okay. All right, great. So I guess if you do have any additional questions that we didn't get to, feel free to email us and check out our website. I see people dropping off now. Thank you so much for spending all this time with us. The clock truly is ticking to get your applications in though. So hopefully this presentation has shown you it's pretty simple. Get yours completed right after this. And we hope to see you apply. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye all.